This film goes over how to find, filter, and purify water during a nuclear radiation crisis. We are going to focus on what to do during the midst of a crisis rather than preparedness, although it does cover that a bit as well. The author is not a physician or emergency management specialist, and this film is for information purposes only. The information this film covers is on ibiblio.org/rcip/nuclear.html. Do not drink water from open water sources. Some researchers feel that water from pipes underground during the first few hours might be safe. If the pipes had not yet been contaminated, it should be collected and stored in clean containers. Possible sources of water inside of a shelter would be melted ice cubes, liquids from canned goods, and also the water heater. That can be dangerous, so make sure you get an expert advice and that the electricity or gas is off and you drain it from the bottom of the tank. Also, water can come from pipes and from covered tanks. Some additional water sources from inside would be, some experts feel that water from toilet tanks, not the bowl but the back part, is either a last resort or else not safe for use consumption for obvious reasons. Water from all sources should be purified before use, and you should consult an expert for instructions on how to access your water heater if you choose to, because there is a severe burn hazard if you do this incorrectly without professional assistance. Both FEMA and Ready.gov claim that water from toilet tanks, radiators, hot water heaters, and home heating systems, waterbeds, swimming pools, and spas are not safe water sources. There is a distinction between a water heater and a hot water boiler, which is a radiator. The State of Louisiana website, however, cites the toilet tank, not the bowl, as being a viable last resort. Most survival websites also encourage the use of available water in water heaters and toilet tanks if properly handled and purified. Next, we're going to cover where to find water outside. So outdoor water sources would be water from deep wells and water tanks and covered reservoirs into which no fallout particles or fallout contaminated water has been introduced, or water from covered seepage pits or shallow hand-dug wells. If the earth is not sandy, gravelly, or too porous, filtration through the earth is very effective, and that's from the Nuclear War Survival Skills book. And also the SAS Survival Handbook lists the safest sources of water, starting with the best as underground wells and springs, water in pipes and containers, and fast-flowing rivers. The main ways to remove radiation from water are reverse osmosis, activated carbon and ion exchange, lime softening, distillation, and filtration through carbon and soil. Carbon-filtered countertop pitchers may offer some help with the radiation until the filter is full, which I imagine might be fairly quickly if it's a small pitcher. If you're looking for a popular resource on how to remove radioactive iodine-131 from water, Forbes.com has a good article for the public. It's a popular resource. It's called How to Remove Radioactive Iodine-131 from Drinking Water by Jeff McMahon. The article explains definitions for the different types of radiation removal systems on one page. It's accessible to the public, and you don't have to log into anything. It is a basic overview. You can also read the Nuclear War Survival Skills Chapter 8, which covers soil filtering and settling mostly. Reverse osmosis is the most often mentioned way to keep radiation out of drinking water, but since our focus is on what to do during a crisis at home, I am going to cover distillation and filtering first. And reverse osmosis requires special equipment, and you would need to order something and have it installed in order for that to work. So first we're going to cover distillation. Distillation may remove some radiation from water according to government experts. It is probably one of the more effective ways of removing radiation from water, but would not remove all types of radiation. According to Dr. Behrens on the Newton website, sponsored by the Argonne National Laboratory and the U.S. Department of Energy, some of the aerosol spray from the distillation process may go into the cup of pure water, so it is not 100% guaranteed. In some situations, radon and iodine may not be removed. It would probably, however, remove most of the cobalt, plutonium, cesium, and strontium. Whether or not the distilled water is safe to drink will depend on how much radioactivity is left and what your standards of safety are. The original website for that is gone, but there are several mirror sites. Some scientists have theorized that putting a hand-sized layer of topical iodine, 2% tincture of iodine, the kind used for wounds, on your stomach may keep your body from absorbing up to 82% of the 131 iodine radioactive iodine. And that's according to Kent Miller. You can distill water using the following process. Basically, you get a large stainless steel pot and you put a small rack inside of the bottom. You put a glass bowl on top of the rack and fill the bottom of the pot with water. You put the lid on upside down with a knob in the middle so any condensation drips into the middle into the bowl, and put ice cubes on top of the upside down lid to create a hot-cold barrier. Heat the water and wait for the condensation to accumulate. Make sure it is cooled before handling or drinking. There are many YouTube videos and tutorials on this topic. Some of the various ways to distill water are stove heat, which we just described, atmospheric water generators. They pull moisture from the air. You can use 2 bottles connected by a bent straw with 1 bottle elevated. You could make a solar still, which is basically a hole in the ground with a plastic tarp on top. An appliance, you could get an appliance that actually distills water, looks kind of like a coffee maker. And you could also research steam vaporizers like a Vicks steam vaporizer. They do not use a fan to spew the steam. It's usually the least expensive type. I would also avoid aerosolized, bubbling, or cold water that would put non-pure water into the air. So we're going to cover a filtering process. The first type would be filtering through dense clay or earth. You can see nuclear war survival skills for directions on page 79 of the PDF, which is a free download, or you can get to it on through the website. It's also, the subject matter is also covered on healthyindeed.com. If you have a terrarium, it's almost the same structure: soil, fabric, pebbles. So from the top layer downwards in a container, like a hanging file folder or those plastic kind, you put water, porous fabric, clay soil 6 to 7 inches, fabric, pebbles 1.5 inches, and then something to prop up the container and a pan to catch the filtered water from the bottom. So next we'll cover settling. Settling is clay particles that will carry out most of the suspended fallout particles to the bottom. There are directions on page 79 of Nuclear War Survival Skills or on the Healthy Indeed website. You can fill a bucket 3/4 full with water, dig up clay from 4 or more inches underground and mix it into the water. There's about 1 inch of clay for every 4 inches of water. You let that settle for 6 hours and then you siphon or dip the water out. So after filtering, you do want to purify the water, and there are some ways to purify water in general, not specific to radiation. You can boil it for 3 to 5 minutes and collect any water that evaporates. You would let it cool, of course, before drinking. Boiling water will not remove radiation. You can also add 4 drops of household bleach that contains 5.25% sodium hypochlorite per quart of water. Do not use bleaches that are scented or color safe. Mix and let stand for 30 minutes and should have a slight bleach odor. Reverse osmosis treatment through Gore-Tex fabric is the most often mentioned way to keep radioactive plutonium and strontium out of drinking water. You do need special equipment to accomplish this. You can buy an economy grade system from several companies. It just looks like an elaborate attachment to your water faucet. So some additional tips. You might be interested in why stainless steel pot. Stainless steel often acts as a thermal shield against radiation, and that's part of the reasons labs use stainless steel sinks. It's best to prevent scratching and corrosion if you're using a stainless steel pot. A lot of camping gear items are stainless steel, and I've given some links to some industry training manuals in case you're curious about finding more about that. Some additional tips. It is possible for glass to become radioactive. Glass is made in part of silica, which is the same thing as the glaze on ceramic dishes. You can look up information about trinitite, the atomic rock. You could also do some research on plastic dishes and eating utensils. So if you're interested in fact-checking, if you're curious about the effectiveness of straining water through soil, you can research soil aquifer treatment, SAT. I've given some links to that. If you are interested in some charts on what removes which type of radiation, there's a link to an article on radionuclides from the West Virginia University. Some additional general resources would be food and water in an emergency from FEMA and the American Red Cross, and also ready.gov page on managing water. I've listed some resources that are basically just on the website. It's a list of the main journal articles and so forth that I use in my research. Special thanks to Cress and Carney for the Nuclear War Survival Skills book.